One of the worst things about being passive is how you beat yourself up afterwards. And you say, why didn't I say something? I can't believe I agreed to that. I'm so foolish. And you have that regret. And
what's up, AventisLearning? Thank you so much for tuning into the 4th episode of Aventis Knows. I'm your host, 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, and for those of you trying to find your way around the corporate ocean or trying to hashtag up your game with a career, this is where you should be. Our episode today is especially for our buddies known to be pushovers. For those of us who can't say no, or for those of us who find it difficult to stand up for ourselves, don't worry, I'm on the same boat. Today we'll be speaking to a reformed lawyer known as the Persuasion Doctor, and he'll help us light the way to understanding assertiveness. After spending more than 10 years in the US, arguing before judges and political and government as well as community bodies, he's realized lawyers prolong problems more than solve them. Without further ado, let's welcome David Goldwich, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, David. Tell us more about the work that you do.
I conduct workshops not only in assertiveness, but in negotiation, impromptu speaking, and storytelling. And I also do some coaching in the area of storytelling.
So you're known as the Persuasion Doctor. So tell us why, or what was there a story behind why you reformed from a lawyer?
I practiced law for about 11 years, and I thought that's what I wanted to do with my life because it's a very interesting field and every day is a different situation. But I found that I wasn't helping people as much as I might like. It was really a lot of intimidation and lawsuits. And I had one guy come into my office in his 30s, and he wanted me to sue his parents. And I thought that's kind of extreme, so I talked to the parents, and it was a mess. And what I ended up doing with them, I didn't sue, but I helped this dysfunctional family return to some sort of a normal life, which is what a family counselor does. It's not what a legal counselor does. So I thought there's got to be a better way for me to use my talents to help people. So I started lecturing and training and speaking, and it's been about 25 years, and I haven't looked back.
That's great. Coming back to today's topic, what is your definition of assertiveness?
I've got two definitions of assertiveness. The first is what I like to call the textbook definition, which is expressing your interests in a way that is clear, direct, and considerate. Clear meaning you say what you mean, you don't drop hints and hope they can read your mind. Direct means no beating around the bush, person to person. And considerate is really the difference between assertive and aggressive. Because aggressive people can be very clear and direct, even blunt. Whereas that really goes beyond that line and is no longer considerate of the other person. So that's the textbook definition, clear, direct, and considerate. There's also what I call the fun definition, which is being able to stand up for yourself without stepping on anybody else's toes. Of course, passive people have a hard time standing up for themselves, while assertive people can do it. Aggressive people can also do it, but they stomp on everybody's toes.
So why do you think being assertive is important?
It's important for a number of reasons. And when I ask my students this question, I get a very interesting range of answers. If I'm teaching it in Asia, they usually give me reasons that support the organization. For example, it enhances clear communication and makes us more effective and efficient and so on. When I teach in the West, I get a very different set of answers, which are a lot more self-oriented. Things like it helps me get a promotion, helps me manage my time, keeps me from being taken advantage of. And I suspect in Asia, people also have these reasons the culture just doesn't allow them to say it out loud.
Definitely.
So all of those reasons are good and legitimate, and assertiveness is important for you as an individual in terms of your career and for the organization. In fact, if you look throughout almost any organization, the people at the top, the most senior leaders, are all assertive. And there's a reason for that. You don't get to the top unless you're assertive. So that is a way to the top in your career path, but it's also good for the organization because the organization needs these kinds of people. They need the next generation of leaders.
Even when assertiveness is that important, why do people still struggle with being assertive?
It's not easy for a lot of people. Depending on the book you read, between 5 and 20% of the population is assertive, which means most people are not. And whether it's 5 or 20, it's still a small number. So it's not easy for most of us to do. It's not within our comfort zone. A lot of people are people pleasers. They like to get approval, they don't want to offend anybody, and for these reasons, they may be reluctant to assert themselves. They equate passivity with politeness, and they're really different things. You can still be assertive and be polite as long as you are still considerate. Remember, that's our dividing line. So those are the main reasons. And there's also some risks in being assertive. For example, if you do ask, they might say no. If you do say no, they may not be happy about it. If you do speak out when you feel a need to do so, other people may not like what you say. So there is some risks, and a lot of times we think, if I'm passive and I don't do anything, then I won't get hurt.
I think I'm guilty as charged when it comes to letting people,
A lot of people are.
Yeah, I don't really take charge in like the things that I do. Like I'm a little afraid of what people might say when I tell them things. So you just technically described me right there.
Okay. As you get older, you think less of what people say.
I really hope I get there soon. So how do we draw a line? Maybe how can we portray or convey our answer without sounding rude?
Okay, a lot of people are worried about sounding rude. And remember that line, clear, direct, but also considerate. As long as you're considerate, you're not rude. As long as you're not stepping on anybody else's toes, you're not rude. So considerate is the main criterion. But there are a couple of other variables that are important. One is culture. What you say in one culture might be accepted, but if you say that in another culture, people may take offense. So rudeness is not a fixed target. It moves with the culture. And when I say culture, I don't just mean ethnic or geographic culture, it also means corporate culture. There's also relationships. One of the hardest things to do is to say no to a boss. Now, if you have a good relationship with your boss, you may be able to say no, and he or she may be perfectly okay with that. Other people with a different kind of relationship may not be able to say no to that person. But there's a bit of hope even there, and that is, remember, the senior people tend to be assertive, and assertive people understand assertiveness, and they're okay with it. So an assertive person might even respect you more if you stand up for yourself, if you say no, if you ask for something. Whereas if you're too much of a people pleaser and too passive, a lot of times these powerful people might despise you and take advantage of you because they don't have any respect for you.
Okay.
So don't be afraid to assert yourself.
I'm just afraid of maybe like after I say no, they might not rely on me as much anymore. I mean, like, I still want the responsibilities that I'm getting, but when I say no that one time, they might, just, okay, I can't rely on you anymore.
I don't think that one time is going to be a problem.
Okay.
And this is an issue you have to think about. Just because you're able to assert yourself does not mean you should do it every time. Does not mean you should say no every time somebody asks you for something. You have to choose your battles.
Yeah, that's true.
And If you say no judiciously and have good reasons, people respect you. If you say no all the time just because you can't be bothered, then they rightly understand they cannot rely on you.
Yeah.
So choose your battles. If it's important, take your shot. Now, even if you say no and they still make you do it, for example, if you tell your boss, I really don't want to do that, and he says, well, I'm sorry, I need you to do this, at least you don't feel bad about yourself. One of the worst things about being passive is how you beat yourself up afterwards. And you say, why didn't I say something? I can't believe I agreed to that. I'm so foolish. And you have that regret. And you really shouldn't have to go through life or your career that way. So choose your battles. Be selective about when you say no. And if you do it under the right circumstances, it should be okay.
Could you share a time whereby you had to face a certain dilemma where you had to choose or maybe stand up for being assertive?
I can probably think of quite a few scenarios. One in particular, I had a business relationship, and one of my business partners wanted to use company funds for a purpose that I thought was inappropriate. And like any dilemma, you have to think, no matter what I do, it's going to be a problem. On the one hand, if I approve the expenditure, then I may have regret. I've got worries and stress, and maybe there's going to be consequences. I certainly don't want to do that. I don't want to do anything that I'm not comfortable with. On the other hand, if I stand up for myself and for what I think is right, there could be some issues in the relationship. They won't be happy about it. So you have to ask yourself, which is the unfortunate consequence that I would prefer to live with? And usually the one that allows you to maintain your self-respect is the one you want to go to. After all, if I'm going to lose a relationship because somebody's not happy that I didn't approve something I don't agree with, I'm not sure that's the kind of relationship I want to maintain in the first place.
So you forego the friendship?
Yeah, the relationship definitely suffered. And it was never the same after that. But I thought I did the right thing. My conscience is clear. I don't have to worry about it.
That's great. I mean, it's a pretty huge leap of faith, though, to just forego the friendship that you had.
Yeah, a lot of people are not really sure who they are and how they want to come down on a certain issue. But if you have strong values, you know what's important to you, it's a lot easier.
So I know that you've been coming across a lot of individuals, training them in how to be assertive. So I'm pretty sure you've had experience on basically knowing what kind of individuals actually get to step up the corporate ladder. So in what situations are people not able to go up the ladder?
Okay, it's not so much particular situations as a particular way of behaving. We saw that the senior people in almost every organization are assertive. So being assertive is one way to get along that career path. If you are not assertive, you probably won't get very far beyond middle management. So in terms of being recognized, being promoted, being given opportunities, even allocating resources. If you're not fighting for what you need or for what your team needs, you're not going to do well individually or as a low-level manager. So here's one particular situation that's quite a conundrum. Imagine you're in a meeting and your boss or somebody very senior says something that you know is not true. What do you do? And how do you do it? If you speak out and embarrass him or her in front of all the board members, that's not going to be good for you. On the other hand, if you say nothing and allow it to happen, there could be repercussions later. So a lot of variables, for example, the relationship with your boss, who the other people are, how seriously your boss takes himself or herself, and also, is this something where I can call time out and discuss it privately, or is this something that's in the moment and it's now or never. So that could be quite a dilemma as well. And in those cases, you want to choose carefully. But again, I think most bosses understand, depending on how you express it, you could be very diplomatic about it. For example, you might say, that's an interesting opinion, and you may know more about it than I do, but it seems to me we need to consider this. Now, this sounds a little bit wishy-washy, and that may also not be what you want to portray. There's a balance between authority and warmth and friendliness and likability. And you can't be 100% authoritative and 100% likable at the same time. You've got to find the balance, and this is something you learn as you progress in your career. Some people better than others, but it's a matter of judgment.
So it hinders an individual from climbing up the corporate ladder, but what is the repercussions that it may have on the organization? So basically the people outside the personal circle,
right.
Do they suffer as well?
Okay, well, imagine this. You're a leader of a team and you're very passive and you don't fight for credit when you do something good or the team does something good. You don't fight for the empty position to be filled or the resources to be allocated. Not only do you suffer, but the team suffers. So weak leaders usually make for a weak team.
Okay. So does that mean it's pretty, the passive individual may be quite dispensable, would you say?
They're often overlooked. Now, there are some people who are passive, but they've got a skill set that the organization values. So they're not indispensable. I mean, they're not going to be cast aside either, but they may not get promoted beyond that technical slot where they excel. They may never make the transition to management. Another thing you want to consider is assertive people understand that this is what assertive people do. Okay? So they may respect you more for being assertive, and they may respect you less for being passive or perceived as weak because you're not able to articulate your interests and fight for the team.
So how can I practice being assertive? Is there a guideline that I can follow?
That's an interesting way of phrasing the question. How can I practice being assertive? Because practice suggests doing, whereas being suggests it's who I am. And assertive is often thought of as I am assertive or not, but the truth is it's really what you do. So you do assertiveness. So in order to do these assertive things, and as you say, be assertive, there's really three constellations of skills that I teach. One is how to ask for things, because passive people have a hard time asking, even though they may be entitled to what they're asking for. And if you don't ask, you don't get. The second skill set is about saying no, because you're inundated with demands on your time, and your time is limited. So you need to be able to protect your time, your agenda, and say no as and when you wish. So how to say no is the second skill set. And the third is how to craft an assertive message for almost any situation where you feel the need to speak up. So these are the three things you can practice. The other thing you can do is ask yourself, when I'm about to say or do this thing that I'm contemplating, am I being considerate as well as clear and direct? Am I stepping on anybody's toes? And that could be the overarching guiding principle in addition to developing skills and practicing in these three areas.
So in terms of maybe creating or crafting a message when you want to convey maybe being assertive, how can we start on that? Maybe there's a certain starting line that we can follow.
Well, in my courses, we spend a lot of time on that. We do role plays. We look at different structures for asserting yourself, how to express it. One, you don't want to assume. You don't want to judge people. You want to be open and positive, and also bear in mind that you may not know everything. So aggressive people, they tend to think, well, I already know all this, and this is what they're doing. I know this game. And they jump to conclusions, make a lot of assumptions, and so on. These are not very good communication behaviors. Assertiveness is really just a way of communicating as well as a way of being. I mean, communication is what we do at work, and it's much of what we do in life. So if you're an effective communicator, in other words, you're clear, direct, considerate, which is our definition of assertive. Considerate means a lot of things. It means I'm polite. It means I'm respectful. It means I'm not judging the person. It means I'm aware of my limitations and I'm listening to learn and not just talking to have my way. So if you're effective and diplomatic and able to express yourself well, then assertiveness comes a lot easier for you.
So let's say a person is more passive than assertive. Do you think it has a certain link to being not confident?
Yes, there's a huge link. I look at it in layers, and assertiveness is the top of the pyramid. That's what you behave like, and that's what people see. But in order to assert yourself, you need to be somewhat confident. Because if you're not confident, you're not going to be able to assert yourself, to speak out, and so on. And then there's a level beyond that, below that, which is self-esteem. If your self-esteem is really low, you're not going to feel the confidence to be assertive. So it's a hierarchy. You've got to start with the self-esteem, and that's something we look at in the class. You can't just do that in one class, but we give you some tips and tools to get started on that journey if that applies to you. Then the confidence we spend a little bit of time on, how to project confidence, and then the assertiveness is the frosting on the cake.
So it comes with confidence and self-esteem to get to being assertive?
A lot of it does. If you're confident, it's a lot easier. It doesn't mean you cannot do it. Just like you can do things if you're terrified of doing it. A lot of it is just will. But a lot of it is also practice and experience, which is where confidence comes from.
If you're still listening, thank you so much for tuning in all the way till here. We've come to the end of our 4th episode of Aventis Knows, and this will also be the last episode for our 1st season. We'll be taking a short break, so in the meantime, if you guys do have any other topics you'd like us to cover, or we'd even appreciate if you guys could drop us feedbacks on stuff that we can improve on for the next season. We'd definitely love that. So feel free to reach out to us on our Instagram at AventisLearning. We hope this 1st season has helped you guys in one way or another to become better individuals and better professionals, and basically just prosper in your career as you upskill yourself consistently. That's all I have for today, and we'll catch you in the next season. Bye!